Are you struggling to get your board involved in the fundraising process? This is the question we get asked most often, which is, how do I get my board engaged in philanthropy? So here are 5 steps to maximize your board's role in philanthropy. Step 1, and it might feel like the most obvious, but is to set fundraising goals and expectations. The biggest mistake that we often see is the board comes on not expecting any role in the philanthropic process, not needing to give, not being asked to give, not being asked to ask. They're just not expected to participate in philanthropy in any way. And then you see it's best practice, oh, I should get my board involved. So then you retroactively ask them after they've already committed to be on the board and say, now I want you to help raise money. And they're like, whoa, I did not sign up for this. And even if we set expectations, we push them to do it, they're just a little bit reluctant, or they'll kind of procrastinate, or they'll do the bare minimum. So if we don't set those expectations on the front end, we're just gonna be fighting an uphill battle the rest of the time for each of those boards' tenures. So the solution to that is, as you recruit board members and as new board members come on, and as you rotate your old ones off, or however you structure it, is to have a very candid conversation during the recruitment process and during the onboarding process about the expectations for both giving and also fundraising as a whole. That may be asking, that may be going along with you on calls, that may be just giving prospects, whatever piece that they're participating in. We just need to clearly define that, even if it's not in writing, but define it sometime in the process so we don't hit them with the switcheroo where, no, you won't have to do a lot of fundraising. Oh, but suddenly we're in campaign mode, and now we do need you to do fundraising. You're just not gonna work. So set those expectations very, very early on, and set goals around it too. Saying, we want our board to have 100% giving. It is our expectation that all of our board gives. And on top of that, we want, for every board meeting that we have them quarterly, we want to generate 10 new prospects that the ED or the Director of Development can go approach for a gift. Doesn't matter really what those expectations are, but set some kind of goals and expectations and do them on the front end so you're not having that uphill battle following the initial recruitment of your board members. Step number 2 is to provide some level of training and support. I cannot tell you how many nonprofits that we work with for the first time, and we say, well, how's your board fundraising? Well, they're okay. We've asked them to do this thing, but they're just not doing a great job, or they're kind of reluctant, or they're struggling with it. Well, how much fundraising training have they gotten? Well, none, of course. It's like, if we've not trained them to do any piece of the job, how can we expect them to be even the least bit successful? Most boards don't have any kind of fundraising training at all. In fact, even most staff members in the industry, in the nonprofit space, don't have any formal fundraising training. And it's really helpful to have some of the best practices in place just to get the basics. Even if you just 1-hour crash course, here's what you say, here's how you pipeline for gifts. But you as the fundraising staff person, or you as the executive director, it is your responsibility to transfer that knowledge to the board so they can be successful. If you just say, hey, go and figure this out, they feel like they have to reinvent the wheel. Maybe they've never asked for money before. Maybe they've never been on a board where they have required fundraising. They're just gonna feel uncomfortable and eventually just either rotate off or just not participate, both of which are not helpful for you. So if you've not given any kind of formalized training or any resources on how you want them to do what they do, they're just not gonna be effective, and often one of the top problems that we have. So give your board some training, teach them how to fundraise. You can bring in an outside firm, but you don't have to. You really can do it just fine with your fundraising staff coming in and teaching them the basics on how you want them to succeed. Step number 3 is to create a culture of giving. What you want is the majority behavior to be the thing that you want, so that as new people come in, they kind of respond and see how other people behave and behave in the same way. This is a very, very easy thing to do once it's up and running. It is a much harder thing to do when you're first starting. So it kind of comes from the top, your board chair, your kind of day one people who are your most participatory, the people who show up at every meeting and they do the stuff in between. We need them to lead by example through giving a gift themselves. Huge mistake. If I could just fix one thing about nonprofit boards nationally, it would be this. I want to totally eliminate giving minimums for boards. Saying, well, you have to give $1,000 to sit on this board. In theory, that sounds good. It's like, well, we have 12 board members. We're going to get $12,000 every single year. This is a huge mistake. Any seasoned fundraiser will tell you this is a really, really terrible idea. Here's why. The people who can't afford $1,000 a year are going to be stretched way outside of their comfort zone, and they either just won't serve on the board, or they won't give, or they'll stretch themselves way too far and give outside their means. All of these are bad things. But even worse, the people who could give 25,000 or 50,000 are just going to give the minimum of 1,000. So you're making it bad in both directions. Maybe there's a couple people whose perfect gift is $1,000 and you've really optimized for those two people. But by setting that board minimum, even if the board minimum is $10,000, I promise you're leaving money on the table, and you're also discounting people whose expertise would be very useful and whose connections would be useful on the board, but now they can't participate either. So don't set any kind of board minimum. What you want to do instead is just have the expectation that 100% of your board participate in giving. They check the box. Now, it's not just, oh, everyone gives $5 and we've checked the box, but everyone has a meaningful gift to them. So a meaningful gift for one person based on their salary and income and current wealth level is going to be very different board member to board member, but it allows you to customize it. So you kind of blanket statement, everyone gives a meaningful gift every year, and then you as the staff person follow up with each of them privately about what their individual giving should be, and we give them the courtesy of a one-on-one ask, just like we would if they were a donor. We often treat, oh, they're our board, of course they'll give. It's like, they should get equal, if not more attention than our donors, because they're our best supporters, the people who are closest to the mission. So instead of having those individual giving levels where you're like, everyone's set at 2,500, set the expectation that 100% of the people must give, and that the staff will be having private conversations one-on-one, probably in person, about each person's participation that year. By far the best way to do it. Furthermore, there's one other reason this is big. There are certain grants you can't even apply for unless all of your board is giving. There are donors who will not consider supporting your charity at all unless your board is entirely giving. You have 100% participation. There are some even go that further than that like, oh, a certain percentage of the campaign has to come from the board, or you have to reach a financial minimum before you can consider applying for these grants. All these things that you just unlock by having good board culture, but it starts with creating that culture, having the understanding that we all give, it's a meaningful gift. My meaningful gift is different than her meaningful gift or different than his. Totally fine, but we're all in that space so that as new people come on, they just have the expectation that not only am I going to participate, but I'm going to give myself. It's the biggest box you can check. Hey, thanks for checking out our video. If you're getting value out of this, but would like something more personalized, you can book 30 minutes with one of our experts to see if you qualify for our support services. Link below in the description. Step number 4 is to assign specific roles and responsibilities within the fundraising process. Again, easy mistake to make is be like, okay, everyone's giving, I've given them some training, I've set the goals and expectations that everyone's gonna be part of the fundraising process. Great, I've checked all the boxes you told me to. Now, everybody on the board, go out and raise $10,000 now that you know how. Come back, and because there's 12 of us, we'll have $120,000 by next month. It'll be a piece of cake. And even if they know how, even if they have training, they don't have a specific lane that they're good at. There are multiple parts to the fundraising continuum. You have the connectors, people who know a lot of people and can get you in front of people who might be a good donor prospect. You have cultivators, those who are great storytellers. They have data, they can answer complex questions about the mission. And you have closers, people who have no problem actually doing the ask or have higher levels of comfort in, or training, background in making the ask. Very few people are good at connecting, cultivating, and closing. As the staff person, sometimes you have to do that. If you're a fundraising development staff member, this is your job, this whole continuum. But for these volunteers, it's much better to segment people and say, okay, in addition to giving, we want the connectors, the people who are strong in their networks, to provide a lot of prospects. We want the cultivators, those who know the intricacies of the mission, who are good storytellers, very good interpersonally. We want them to interface with our prospects to convince them why they might give. And we do want some closers who have no problem asking for the gift. Now, if you're missing any of these pieces on your board, totally fine. You, the staff person, can fill in the gaps. But ideally, you ask someone to do 1, maybe 2 of those steps and kind of establish it, state it out loud, saying, you can take these personality tests that we have for connectors, cultivators, and closers. Allows people to kind of see what fundraising personality they best fit into, and then just assign them more work in that lane and little to no work in the other lanes. Again, some people might be good at 2, most people are pretty good at 1, not usually good to make someone try to do all 3. So allow those specific roles and responsibilities in order to segment people's roles, give them a narrow focus. Hey, all you gotta do is you gotta bring prospects to the table. All you gotta do is go with me on calls and talk about why you give, then I'll make the ask. Super simple. All right, number 5, the 5th and final step in this process is to monitor and actually evaluate your performance on an ongoing basis. There's the saying that what gets measured gets managed. This very much applies here. So in the case that you do all these steps correctly, but you don't talk about goals or you don't report on your benchmarks when you hit certain milestones, it just kind of gets lost to the ether. And there's nothing wrong with this. We're just saying that from a board's time perspective, fundraising is not a priority. We don't really need to talk about it in the meetings or send out as much stuff in between. Probably fine, but if you're looking to maximize your revenue and highly engage your board in fundraising, really, really important to, at each board meeting, or even before each board meeting, send out a little report of here's where we're at in terms of board prospects, in terms of board giving, in terms of the campaign as a whole. If we just put it on the agenda and have it be one of the first things we talk about, the board members that you want, the ones who are high performers, they stick around, they help you with your funding, they'll naturally kind of gravitate toward hitting those KPIs or key performance indicators, whatever you want to call it. We don't want to do a lot, just pick a couple of key metrics. Like each quarter, we want to have 30 new prospects that the board introduce us to, or 5 new prospects, start out super easy. Or we want the board's prospects to account for $30,000 a year in gift revenue. Pick something that's very manageable at first, but do measure it and do report on it at each board meeting so they can see, yes, I'm doing these things, but I'm making tangible progress towards that goal. Dollar amount is important, we do want to report that, but there are additional steps that you can talk about along the way just to kind of motivate people. Just by putting those numbers in front of your board on a consistent basis, they'll naturally want to see those go up, and when they do go up, celebrate the heck out of it. Be very, very intentional about pushing those things on your board, saying, look at all these wonderful things we've done. We've already gotten 15 new prospects, 3 of those are considering major gifts. Talk about how excited you are about it. So we're sort of reinforcing that good behavior. So let's just not forget overall that our board is one of the most powerful fundraising tools that we have, and nationally, most charities are severely underutilizing them in the fundraising department. If you're struggling to get your board engaged in philanthropy, participating in the fundraising process, try a few of these steps, get them pushed down the road so that eventually you have this wonderful culture of philanthropy that kind of perpetuates itself. But for now, set your goals and expectations, provide training and support, create a culture of giving, assign specific roles and responsibilities within the fundraising process, and monitor and evaluate your board's performance. Use these principles to finally engage your board in philanthropy. Hey, thanks for checking out our video. If you're ready to level up your fundraising program, Pride Philanthropy might be able to help. Our team helps raise over $100 million per year for dozens of clients all over the country. We train staff and volunteers, conduct feasibility studies, and manage multi-year campaigns. If you're looking for outside help to kickstart your program or rejuvenate your efforts, you can book a free 30-minute call with one of our experts to see if you qualify as a client of Pride. Visit pridephilanthropy.com or click the link below, and we'll see you over there.